Avoiding power, the dark side of being calm. Cold open.
You are not calm. You're avoiding power. There's a difference. Calm sounds like strength. It looks like maturity. People praise it. They reward it. They tell you it means you've evolved. But most of the time, calm is just fear with better posture. It's the voice you learned to use when your real voice got you in trouble. It's the stillness you trained into your body when anger made people leave. It's the smile you perfected when showing emotion meant losing control of the room. Calm wasn't chosen. It was survived into. And now it runs you. You don't raise your voice because you learned that volume equals weakness. You don't push back because you were taught that reaction equals instability. You stay even because uneven meant unsafe. But here's what no one tells you. Calmness, when it's a reflex, is not power. It's a cage. And the bars are invisible. You've been walking around thinking you're disciplined, thinking you're mature, thinking you're the one in control. But the truth is simpler. You're controlled by the need to stay calm. And that need is costing you everything. This audiobook is not about learning to be calm. You already are. This is about understanding why and what it's doing to your life. Because the people who run the room are not the calmest. They're the ones who stopped performing calm and started choosing power. Let's begin.
Part 1. How calm became a cage. Chapter 1. Calm was never neutral.
Calm is not a personality trait. It's a learned behavior. Most people think they were born calm, that it's just who they are, that it's in their nature to stay even, to not react, to keep their voice steady when everything inside them is screaming. But you weren't born calm. You were born loud. You cried when you were hungry. You screamed when you were afraid. You threw things when you were frustrated. You didn't manage your emotions. You expressed them. Then something happened. You learned that expression had consequences. Maybe your anger made someone leave. Maybe your sadness made people uncomfortable. Maybe your excitement was too much, too loud, too inconvenient. So you adjusted. You turned the volume down. You smoothed your face. You made yourself smaller. Not because you wanted to, because you had to. And it worked. People stopped leaving. They stopped getting uncomfortable. They started calling you mature, reasonable, easy to be around. Calm became your currency. But currency costs something. And what it cost you was access to your own power. Because calmness, when it's a survival response, is not the same as emotional control. It's emotional suppression. And suppression doesn't make you strong. It makes you manageable. Think about the last time you wanted to say something and didn't. Not because it wasn't true. Not because it wasn't important. But because saying it felt too risky. Too much. Too likely to disturb the peace you've worked so hard to maintain. That's not strength. That's trained silence. And trained silence feels like calm, but it functions like fear. The people who have power don't avoid disruption. They create it. They speak when it's uncomfortable. They move when it's inconvenient. They take up space even when the room doesn't want them to. Not because they lack control, but because they understand something you were never taught. Calm is not the goal. Influence is. And influence requires presence. Not the polite, quiet, easy-to-ignore kind. The kind that changes the room when you walk in. The kind that makes people adjust to you, not the other way around. You can't have that if you're still trying to be calm. Because calm, as you've learned it, is not about being centered. It's about being safe. And safety, in this context, means small. Most people spend their entire lives thinking they're calm when really they're just controlled. Controlled by the fear of being too much. Controlled by the need to keep everyone comfortable. Controlled by a version of themselves they built to survive a world that didn't know how to handle their full range. And now that version runs the show. It decides when you speak, when you don't, when you push, when you fold, when you're allowed to feel something, and when you have to put it away. That's not inner peace. That's inner prison. And the warden is the part of you that still believes calm equals strength. But strength is not the absence of reaction. Strength is the ability to choose your reaction, to feel everything and decide what to do with it, to access anger without becoming it, to touch sadness without drowning in it, to hold power without needing to prove it. Calm people don't do that. They skip the feeling part entirely. They go straight to control, and they think that makes them evolved. But all it makes them is numb. And numb people don't lead. They follow. They defer. They wait for someone else to make the decision, take the risk on the room. Because owning the room requires presence. And presence requires access to the full spectrum of who you are. Not just the parts that are easy, the parts that are dangerous. And you've spent so long making yourself easy that you forgot how to be dangerous.
Chapter 2. The training you don't remember.
You don't remember the exact moment you learned to be calm, but your body does. Somewhere in your past, you had an emotional response that didn't land well. Maybe you cried, and someone told you to stop. Maybe you got angry, and someone told you to calm down. Maybe you got excited, and someone told you to relax. It didn't feel like training at the time. It felt like correction, like guidance, like someone helping you become a better version of yourself. But what they were really teaching you was suppression, not how to manage your emotions, how to hide them. And hiding became your default. Most people think they're calm because they've mastered their emotions. But mastery implies choice. And most of the time, there's no choice happening. Just reflex. Just the automatic shutdown that kicks in the second something uncomfortable starts to rise. You feel anger. You swallow it. You feel frustration. You breathe through it. You feel the urge to speak up. You wait. And you call that discipline. But discipline is deliberate. This is automatic. And automatic responses are not about strength. They're about safety. Your nervous system learned, a long time ago, that certain emotions were dangerous. That expressing them came with consequences. Loss of approval. Loss of connection. Loss of control. So it built a system to protect you. It taught you to scan the room before you speak. To measure your tone before you respond. To calculate the risk of every emotional expression before you let it out. And that system is still running. Every time you feel something strong and immediately try to calm yourself down, that's not you choosing peace. That's you obeying the training. Every time you think about saying something honest and then edit it into something safer, that's not you being wise. That's you staying small. The training was so effective that you don't even notice it anymore. You think this is just who you are. The calm one. The reasonable one. The one who doesn't overreact. But you're not the calm one. You're the one who learned that overreacting meant losing. And now you underreact to everything. You underreact when someone disrespects you. You underreact when someone takes credit for your work. You underreact when someone crosses a boundary you spent years building. Not because you don't care, but because reacting feels too risky. And risk, in your system, equals danger. So you stay calm. You stay safe. You stay quiet. And people call you mature. But maturity is not the same as self-abandonment. Real maturity is knowing when to stay calm and when to burn the room down. It's having access to both. It's not being afraid of your own range. But you are afraid. Because you were taught to be. And now that fear looks like wisdom. It looks like control. It looks like you've transcended the need for emotional expression. But you haven't transcended anything. You've just learned to perform calm so well that even you believe it.
Chapter 3. Why calm people are safe and powerless.
Calm people are easy to be around. They don't cause problems. They don't make demands. They don't take up space in ways that make others uncomfortable. And that's exactly why they're powerless. Power is not about being liked. It's about being respected. And respect does not come from being easy. It comes from being undeniable. Calm people are deniable. They speak softly, so their words get ignored. They react minimally, so their boundaries get tested. They stay composed, so people assume they're fine with everything. And then they wonder why no one takes them seriously. It's not because they lack intelligence, or competence, or value. It's because they lack presence. And presence requires disruption. You have to be willing to make people uncomfortable. To say the thing that shifts the room. To stand in your position even when everyone else wants you to move. Calm people don't do that. They adjust. They accommodate. They make space for everyone else and assume someone will make space for them in return. But no one does. Because the world does not reward calm. It rewards force. Not aggression. Not violence. But force. The ability to move through resistance without apologizing for it. Calm people apologize for everything. They apologize for speaking, for taking up time, for having needs, for existing in a way that requires attention. And every apology is a surrender. It tells the world that you're not sure you deserve to be here. that you're willing to shrink if it makes things easier, that your presence is negotiable. And negotiable people do not have power. They have permission, and permission can be revoked. The people who lead, who influence, who shape the direction of every room they enter are not asking for permission. They're taking space. They're speaking with the assumption that their words matter. They're moving with the certainty that their presence changes things. And they're not calm, not in the way you are. They might be controlled, disciplined, strategic, but they're not afraid of their own intensity. They're not managing themselves into invisibility. They're not performing ease so everyone else feels comfortable. They're comfortable making people uncomfortable. And that's the difference. Calm people think power is loud, that it's aggressive, that it requires force and volume and dominance. But power is not loud. Power is undeniable. It's the person who walks into the room and doesn't ask where to sit. They just sit, and the room adjusts. It's the person who speaks once and doesn't repeat themselves, because they know their words land. It's the person who says no without explaining, because they don't need to justify their boundaries. That's power. And you can't have it if you're still trying to be calm. Because calm, the way you practice it, is designed to keep you safe. And safety and power do not coexist. You can have one or the other, but not both. And right now, you've chosen safety. You've chosen to be the person who doesn't make waves, who doesn't push back, who doesn't demand to be seen. And that choice has made you invisible, not to yourself, but to everyone else. Because invisible is safe. And safe is what you were trained to be. But safe is not powerful. And if you want power, you're going to have to let go of safe.
Part 2, The Psychology of Avoidance. Chapter 4, Calm is often fear in disguise.
You think you're calm, but most of the time, you're afraid. Afraid of conflict. Afraid of rejection. Afraid of being seen as too much, too emotional, too difficult to deal with. So you stay even. You keep your voice steady. You manage your face. You perform calm. And you call it strength. But it's not strength. It's avoidance. Avoidance dressed up as maturity, as wisdom, as emotional intelligence. But real emotional intelligence is not about suppressing your emotions. It's about understanding them, feeling them, and deciding what to do with them. You're not doing that. You're skipping straight to suppression. And suppression is not the same as control. Control implies choice. You feel something, you assess it, and you decide how to respond. Suppression is different. You feel something, and you shut it down before it even has a chance to register. You don't assess it. You don't decide. You just eliminate it. And you've gotten so good at eliminating your emotions that you don't even notice when they show up anymore. Someone disrespects you. You feel a flicker of anger. And before that flicker can turn into anything, you extinguish it. You tell yourself it's not worth it, that it's not a big deal, that reacting would make things worse. And maybe that's true, but maybe it's not. Maybe the reason you think reacting would make things worse is because you've spent your entire life believing that any emotional response is a loss of control. And loss of control, in your system, is the worst thing that can happen. So you stay calm. You stay controlled. You stay safe. But safe from what? Not from danger. From discomfort. And discomfort is not dangerous. It's just uncomfortable. But you've been avoiding discomfort for so long that your nervous system treats it like a threat, like something that has to be managed, minimized, eliminated. So you manage it. You minimize it. You eliminate it. And in the process, you eliminate yourself. Because you can't eliminate discomfort without eliminating presence. And presence is where power lives. Power is not comfortable. It's not easy. It's not calm. Power is the willingness to feel everything and still move forward. To touch anger and not become it. To feel fear and not let it run you. To experience discomfort and not need to fix it immediately. But you can't do that if you're still trying to be calm. Because calm, the way you've learned it, is not about presence. It's about absence. Absence of emotion. Absence of reaction. Absence of anything that might disturb the carefully controlled image you've spent years building. And that image is killing you. Not literally, but energetically. Because you're spending all your energy trying to stay calm. Trying to keep everything even. Trying to make sure nothing slips through the cracks. And that takes effort. Constant, exhausting, invisible effort. You're working so hard to appear effortless that you've forgotten what ease actually feels like. Real ease is not about control. It's about trust. Trust that you can feel something and not fall apart. Trust that you can react and not lose yourself. Trust that you can be honest and people won't leave. But you don't trust that because you've seen what happens when you're honest. When you react, when you let yourself feel something fully, people get uncomfortable. They pull away. They tell you to calm down. So you did. You calmed down so much that now you can't turn it off. And now calm is not a choice. It's a prison. And the bars are fear. Fear of being too much. Fear of losing control. Fear of finding out that if you stop being calm, there's nothing left. But there is something left. There's you. The version of you that existed before you learned to suppress everything. The version that felt things deeply and expressed them honestly and didn't apologize for taking up space. That version still exists. You just buried it under years of training. Years of being told that calm equals good and emotional equals bad. But emotional doesn't mean bad. It means human. And human is what you're trying not to be. Because being human means being messy. And messy means unpredictable. And unpredictable means you can't control how people respond to you. So you stay calm. You stay predictable. You stay in control. And you call it strength. But strength is not the absence of emotion. Strength is the capacity to hold emotion without letting it destroy you. And you can't build that capacity if you're still running from emotion. You have to stop running. Stop suppressing. Stop performing calm like it's the only thing keeping you safe. Because it's not keeping you safe. It's keeping you small. And small is not where power lives.
Chapter 5: The Addiction to Being Mature.
You're addicted to being seen as mature. Not consciously, but functionally. Every time you swallow your reaction, you get a hit of validation. People nod. They respect you. They call you reasonable, grounded, the calm one. And that feels good. It feels like proof that you're doing it right. That you've evolved past the need for emotional expression. That you're better than the people who react, who lose control, who let their feelings run them. But you're not better. You're just more controlled. And control, when it's a performance, is exhausting. But you don't stop. Because stopping would mean losing the identity you've built. The identity of the person who has it together. Who doesn't crack. Who doesn't need anything from anyone. That identity is your armor. And you've worn it for so long that you've forgotten it's not actually you. It's a role. A performance. A version of yourself you constructed to survive a world that rewarded calm and punished emotion. And now you're stuck in it. Because letting go of the performance would mean admitting that you're not as mature as everyone thinks. That you're not as evolved. That underneath the calm exterior, you're just as uncertain, just as reactive, just as human as everyone else. And that terrifies you. Because if you're not the mature one, who are you? If you're not the calm one, what's left? So you keep performing. You keep swallowing. You keep managing yourself into a version that other people can tolerate. And you call it growth. But growth is not about becoming more palatable. It's about becoming more yourself. And yourself is not calm. Yourself is full, complex, contradictory, capable of rage and joy and sadness and power, sometimes all in the same hour. But you've been editing that out, smoothing it over, turning yourself into a single note. And that single note is boring, not to other people, to you. You're bored of being calm, bored of being reasonable, bored of being the person everyone can count on to not cause problems. But you don't know how to stop. Because stopping would mean disappointing people. And disappointing people would mean losing their approval. And losing their approval would mean losing the only source of validation you've learned to trust. So you stay addicted. Addicted to the nod, the acknowledgement, the quiet respect that comes from being the one who never loses it. But respect without fear is not respect. It's tolerance. And tolerance is not power.
Chapter 6: Reaction versus Power.
Most people think power is the absence of reaction. That the person who stays calm in every situation is the person in control. But that's not true. The person in control is not the person who doesn't react. It's the person who chooses their reaction. There's a difference. Not reacting is avoidance. Choosing your reaction is power. And you've been avoiding. You've been telling yourself that staying calm means you're in control. But control is not about suppression. It's about selection. You feel anger. You don't suppress it. You feel it fully. And then you decide what to do with it. Do you express it? Do you store it? Do you let it inform your next move? That's power. But you're not doing that. You're suppressing it before you even feel it. You're cutting it off at the source. And that's not control. That's fear. Fear that if you let yourself feel it, you won't be able to stop. That it'll take over. That you'll become the emotion instead of using it. But that only happens when you've been suppressing for years. When you finally let yourself feel, it comes out sideways. Explosive. Uncontrolled. Not because the emotion is too strong, but because you've been holding it back for too long. And now you're afraid of it. So you keep holding it back. You keep staying calm. You keep telling yourself that this is strength. But strength is not the absence of reaction. Strength is the ability to hold the full weight of your reaction and still choose what to do with it. And you can't do that if you're still avoiding the reaction entirely. You have to stop avoiding. Stop suppressing. Stop pretending that calm is the goal. Because calm is not the goal. Power is. And power requires access to the full range of who you are. Not just the calm parts. The dangerous parts. The parts that make people uncomfortable. The parts that take up space. The parts that don't apologize. Those are the parts that have power. And you've been hiding them your entire life. It's time to stop hiding.
Part 3. What real control looks like. Chapter 7. Control is not calmness.
Real control is not the absence of intensity. It's the ability to access intensity without being consumed by it. Most people confuse the two. They think control means staying even, keeping your voice down, never showing strain. But that's not control. That's performance. Control is knowing you could raise your voice and choosing not to. It's feeling the full force of your anger and deciding whether to use it or store it. It's having access to every emotional frequency and selecting the one that serves you. You don't have that. What you have is a single frequency, calm, and you play it on repeat because it's the only one you trust. But playing one note is not mastery. It's limitation. Real mastery is range. It's being able to go from calm to intense to commanding to soft, all within the same conversation, all without losing yourself in any of it. That's what power looks like. Not the person who never reacts. The person who reacts exactly as much as they choose to. And right now, you're not choosing. You're defaulting. Defaulting to calm because it's safe. Because it's familiar. Because it's what you've always done. But defaulting is not control. It's automation. And automated responses don't build power. They build predictability. And predictable people get tested. Think about the people who command respect. The ones who change the energy of a room just by walking into it. They're not always calm. Sometimes they're sharp. Sometimes they're warm. Sometimes they're silent in a way that makes you lean in. They're not locked into one mode. They move fluidly between states, depending on what the moment requires. That's control, not staying calm. Staying present. And presence requires range. You can't be present if you're constantly managing yourself, constantly monitoring your tone, constantly making sure you don't feel too much or show too much or take up too much space. That's not presence. That's containment. And containment is exhausting. You're spending all your energy trying to keep yourself contained when you should be using that energy to direct the room. Because that's what powerful people do. They don't manage themselves into invisibility. They direct attention. They shape conversations. They create the conditions they want instead of adapting to whatever conditions exist. And they can do that because they're not afraid of their own range. They know they can access anger without becoming angry. They can touch intensity without losing control. They can feel everything and still think clearly. But you don't trust yourself to do that. You think if you let yourself feel something fully, you'll lose control. That the emotion will take over. That you'll become the thing you've spent years trying not to be. So you keep yourself on a leash. A short, tight leash that doesn't let you move more than a few inches in any direction. And you call that control. But it's not control. It's restraint. And restraint is not the same as power. Power is freedom. The freedom to feel everything and use what serves you. The freedom to be intense when intensity is needed and calm when calm is strategic. Not calm because you're afraid. Calm because you chose it. That's the difference. Right now, your calm is chosen for you. by your nervous system, by your training, by the part of you that learned a long time ago that staying calm keeps you safe. But you're not in danger anymore. You're just in a pattern, and patterns can be broken. You don't have to stay calm all the time. You don't have to keep yourself on that leash. You don't have to perform control to prove you have it. Real control is quiet. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't need to. It just is. And it shows up not in how calm you stay, but in how fluidly you move between states. That's what you're aiming for. Not perfect calm, perfect range. The ability to be whatever the moment requires without losing yourself in it. That's control. And it starts with letting go of the idea that calm is the goal.
Chapter 8: The Power of Emotional Range.
Emotions are not problems to solve. They're tools to use. But you've been treating them like threats, like things that need to be managed, controlled, eliminated before they cause damage. And that approach has cost you access to the most powerful parts of yourself. Because emotions are information, and information is power. Anger tells you when a boundary has been crossed. Sadness tells you when something matters. Fear tells you when something is at stake. Joy tells you when you're aligned. But you're not listening to any of it. You're too busy suppressing it. Every time anger rises, you shut it down. Every time sadness surfaces, you push it away. Every time fear shows up, you breathe through it like it's an inconvenience. And in doing so, you're cutting yourself off from the very signals that could guide you. Powerful people don't suppress their emotions. They use them. They feel anger and let it sharpen their focus. They feel fear and let it inform their strategy. They feel sadness and let it deepen their understanding. They don't run from emotions. They run with them. And that's what gives them range. They can be soft when soft serves them, hard when hard is needed, calm when calm is strategic, intense when intensity moves things forward. They're not stuck in one mode. They're fluid, adaptive, responsive, and that fluidity is what makes them dangerous. Not dangerous in a violent way, dangerous in a powerful way. You can't predict them. You can't box them in. You can't assume they'll stay calm just because they were calm 5 minutes ago. That unpredictability creates respect. Because people don't respect predictability. They respect range. They respect the person who can be 3 different things in the same conversation and still be coherent. The person who can laugh and then go cold without it feeling jarring. That's range. And you don't have it. Because you've been playing one note for so long that you've forgotten how to play anything else. You've forgotten what it feels like to let anger move through you without apologizing for it. To let sadness sit without trying to fix it. To let intensity build without needing to diffuse it immediately. Those moments feel dangerous to you. But they're not dangerous. They're alive. And aliveness is where power lives. Not in calm. In presence. In the full expression of whatever is true in the moment. But you're not expressing what's true. You're expressing what's safe. And safe is not the same as true. True might mean sharp. True might mean uncomfortable. True might mean saying the thing that shifts the entire dynamic. But you don't say it. Because saying it would mean stepping out of the calm role. And stepping out of that role feels like losing control. But you're not in control. The role is in control. And the role is killing your range. It's making you one-dimensional. Predictable. Easy to dismiss. Because people dismiss what they can predict. They lean into what they can't. And right now, you're too predictable. Too calm. Too measured. Too careful. And careful people don't change rooms. They occupy them quietly and hope someone notices. But no one notices. Because there's nothing to notice. You've smoothed yourself into something so neutral that there's no edge left. No texture. No friction. And friction is what creates energy. Without it, you're just background. Pleasant. Tolerable. Forgettable. And you're better than that. You have more range than you're using. More depth than you're showing. More power than you're accessing. But you won't access it until you stop being afraid of it. Until you stop treating emotions like problems and start treating them like tools. Until you stop performing calm and start choosing presence. Because presence is not about being calm. It's about being full. Full of whatever is true in the moment. Full of the anger that needs to be felt. Full of the sadness that needs space. Full of the intensity that moves things forward. That fullness is your power. And you've been draining it for years in the name of staying calm. It's time to stop draining and start filling.
Chapter 9: when calm becomes a weapon.
There is a version of calm that is powerful, but it's not the version you're using. The calm you practice is defensive. It's designed to protect you, to keep you safe, to make sure nothing gets in and nothing gets out. That's not powerful. That's closed. Real calm is offensive. It's strategic. It's a choice you make not because you're afraid, but because you know it will do more damage than any other response. That's when calm becomes a weapon. When you're so secure in your power that you don't need to prove it. When you can watch someone try to provoke you and not take the bait. Not because you're suppressing your reaction, but because you've decided their move doesn't deserve your energy. That's different. That's not avoidance. That's dismissal. And dismissal is one of the most powerful moves you can make. But you can't dismiss someone if you're still afraid of them. And right now, you're afraid of everyone. Not consciously, but functionally. You're afraid of how they'll react if you speak up. Afraid of how they'll perceive you if you push back. Afraid of what will happen if you stop being calm. So your calm is not a weapon. It's a shield. And shields are defensive. They protect you from impact. But they don't create impact. And impact is what you need if you want power. You need to be able to land. To leave a mark. To make people remember the moment you spoke. But you can't do that from behind a shield. You have to drop it. Step forward. Be willing to take the hit if it comes. And most of the time, it won't come. Because people don't challenge people who are comfortable in their power. They challenge people who look like they're hiding. And you look like you're hiding. You look like you're managing yourself. Monitoring yourself. Making sure you don't step out of line. And that makes you an easy target. Because people test what they think they can move. And you look movable. You look like if they push hard enough, you'll fold. You'll apologize. You'll shrink back into the calm, polite, non-threatening version of yourself. And they're right. Because that's what you do. Every time someone challenges you, you de-escalate. You smooth it over. You find a way to make it okay. Not because it is okay, but because conflict feels too dangerous. And danger, in your system, must be avoided. But avoidance is not power. Power is the willingness to let conflict exist. To not fix it immediately. To sit in the tension and let the other person feel uncomfortable for once. That's when calm becomes dangerous. When it's not about keeping the peace. It's about controlling the room. When you can look at someone, say nothing, and make them feel the weight of their mistake. That's power. But you can't access it if you're still trying to make everyone comfortable. Because making people comfortable is not your job. Your job is to take up the space you deserve. To say the things that need to be said. To be the version of yourself that is too solid to move. And solid is not the same as calm. Solid is unmoved, unshaken, unbothered by the reactions of people who don't matter. That's the version of calm that has power. The version that doesn't need to explain itself. Doesn't need to soften its edges. Doesn't need to make sure everyone is okay before it speaks. It just speaks. And the room adjusts. That's what you're aiming for. Not the calm that keeps you safe. The calm that makes other people careful. The calm that says, without words, that you are not the one to test. That you are not movable. Not manageable. Not someone who will fold under pressure. That calm is earned. Not by suppressing yourself, but by trusting yourself. Trusting that you can handle whatever comes. That you don't need to control every outcome. That you can be exactly who you are and let the consequences unfold. That trust is what turns calm into a weapon. And right now, you don't have it. Because you're still afraid. Afraid of what will happen if you stop managing yourself. If you stop performing. If you let people see the version of you that isn't always calm. But that version is the one with power. And you won't access it until you stop being afraid of it.
Part 4, Reclaiming Power. Chapter 10, Stop Performing Calm.
You've been performing calm for so long that you don't know what you actually feel anymore. Someone asks how you are. You say fine. Not because you're fine. Because fine is the answer that ends the conversation. Someone crosses a boundary. You let it go. Not because it doesn't matter. Because addressing it feels too confrontational. Someone disrespects you. You smile. Not because you're unbothered. Because showing you're bothered feels weak. This is not calm. This is performance. And the performance is exhausting. You're spending so much energy trying to appear calm that you have none left to actually be present. And presence is where power lives. Not in the appearance of calm. In the reality of being here. Fully. Without editing. without managing, without performing. But you can't be present if you're still performing. Because performing requires distance. You have to step outside yourself. Monitor how you're coming across. Adjust in real time. That's not presence. That's surveillance. And you've been surveilling yourself for years. Watching yourself. Correcting yourself. Making sure you're not too much or too little or too anything. And in doing so, you've abandoned yourself. You've prioritized the version of you that other people can tolerate over the version of you that actually exists. And that version, the real one, is still in there, buried under years of performance, years of managing, years of trying to be the calm one. But it's tired of being buried. It wants out, and it's going to come out eventually, either intentionally, because you choose to let it, or explosively, because you can't hold it back anymore. Most people wait for the explosion. They suppress and suppress and suppress until one day something small happens and they lose it. And then they feel ashamed because they've spent so long being calm that any deviation from calm feels like failure. But it's not failure. It's honesty. Your body is telling you that the performance is unsustainable, that you can't keep doing this, that something has to change. And what has to change is not your ability to stay calm. It's your need to perform it. You don't have to be calm all the time. You're allowed to be frustrated, annoyed, angry, sad, disappointed. You're allowed to feel things and let other people see it. Not performatively, not dramatically, just honestly. This bothers me. This hurt me. This crossed the line. You don't have to say it calmly. You don't have to soften it. You don't have to make it easier for them to hear. You just have to say it. And trust that saying it won't destroy you. Because it won't. What will destroy you is continuing to perform, continuing to suppress, continuing to pretend that you're fine when you're not. That's what breaks people. Not the feeling, the denial of the feeling. And you've been denying your feelings for so long that you've convinced yourself they don't exist. But they do exist. They're just underground, waiting, building pressure. And the longer you keep them underground, the more damage they do when they surface. So stop keeping them underground. Stop performing calm. Stop managing yourself into a version that other people prefer. Start being honest. Start being present. Start being the version of yourself that feels things fully and expresses them clearly. That version is not calm, but it's real. And real is more powerful than calm will ever be.
Chapter 11. Becoming Hard to Ignore.
You've spent your life trying not to be too much, too loud, too intense, too demanding. And in doing so, you've made yourself easy to ignore. Because people ignore what doesn't demand attention. And you don't demand attention. You request it. Politely, quietly, and only when it's convenient. But power doesn't request. It commands. Not through force. Through presence. Through the certainty that what you have to say matters. That your existence in the room changes things. That people should pay attention not because you're loud, but because you're undeniable. And right now, you're very deniable. You speak softly, so people talk over you. You wait your turn, so your turn never comes. You make yourself small, so people assume you don't need space. And then you wonder why no one sees you. They don't see you because you're hiding. Not physically, energetically. You're hiding your intensity, your opinions, your needs, your edges, all the things that would make you hard to ignore. Because being hard to ignore feels dangerous. It feels like it will make people uncomfortable, like it will cause conflict, like it will cost you relationships. And maybe it will. But what you're doing now is costing you more. It's costing you respect, influence, power. It's costing you the ability to move through the world as someone who matters. Because mattering requires presence, and presence requires visibility. And you can't be visible if you're still trying to be small. You have to take up space, not apologetically, not tentatively, fully. You have to speak with the assumption that people will listen, move with the assumption that people will adjust, exist with the assumption that you belong here. Not because you've earned it, because it's true. You do belong here. Your voice does matter. Your presence does change things. But you won't believe that until you start acting like it. And acting like it doesn't mean being loud. It means being solid. Solid in your position. Solid in your boundaries. Solid in your refusal to shrink just because someone else wants more room. That solidity is what makes you hard to ignore. Not because you're demanding, Because you're immovable. People test what they can move. And when they realize they can't move you, they stop testing. And they start respecting. But respect doesn't come from being calm. It comes from being clear. Clear about who you are. Clear about what you will and won't tolerate. Clear about the fact that you're not going anywhere just because someone is uncomfortable with your presence. That clarity is your power, and you've been hiding it for years. Because clarity creates conflict, and conflict feels unsafe. But conflict is not unsafe. It's just uncomfortable, and uncomfortable is not the same as dangerous. You can handle discomfort. You've been handling it your entire life. The difference is that now, instead of swallowing the discomfort to keep others comfortable, you let them feel it. You let them be uncomfortable with your boundaries, with your honesty, with the fact that you're not going to shrink anymore. And most of the time, they'll adjust. Because people adjust to solidity. They adjust to clarity. They adjust to people who are unmoved by their reactions. But they don't adjust to people who are always adjusting. Those people get tested, pushed, ignored. Because if you're adjusting, you're movable. And movable people don't command respect. They, and hope someone grants it. But you're done requesting. You're done hoping. You're done waiting for permission to take up space. You're going to take it and let people adjust. That's what powerful people do. They don't ask. They don't explain. They don't justify. They just exist fully and let the room figure out how to accommodate them. That's what you're going to do. Not because you're arrogant, because you're done being small. And being done is powerful.
Chapter 12, The New Definition of Strength.
Strength is not staying calm. Strength is being full. Full of everything you feel. Full of everything you know. Full of everything you are. And letting that fullness exist without apology. Most people think strength is restraint. The ability to hold back. To not react. To stay even no matter what. But that's not strength. That's control. And control is exhausting. Real strength is capacity. The ability to hold everything without breaking. To feel anger without becoming it. To touch sadness without drowning. To experience intensity without losing yourself. That capacity is built not by suppressing, but by expanding. By letting yourself feel more. Hold more. Be more. And you've been doing the opposite. You've been contracting. Making yourself smaller. Narrower. Safer. And in doing so, you've weakened yourself. Because strength is not about how little you feel. It's about how much you can hold. And you can hold more than you think. You just haven't tried. Because trying feels risky. It feels like if you let yourself feel something fully, it will consume you. But it won't. What consumes you is the suppression. The constant effort to keep everything locked down. The energy it takes to perform calm when everything inside you is screaming. That's what exhausts you. Not the feeling. The denial of the feeling. And the denial is what makes you weak. Because denied emotions don't disappear. They accumulate. They build pressure. They leak out sideways in ways you can't control. And that lack of control is what you're actually afraid of. You're not afraid of feeling. You're afraid of what happens when you feel and can't stop. But that only happens because you've been suppressing for so long. When you finally feel, it's explosive. Because it's years of emotion trying to escape at once. But if you stop suppressing, the explosions stop. Because emotions move through you instead of building up inside you. They rise. They peak. They pass. And you're still standing. That's strength. Not the ability to not feel. The ability to feel fully and remain intact. To be moved by something and not destroyed by it. To let intensity run through you and come out the other side clearer than you were before. That's what powerful people do. They don't avoid intensity. They use it. They let it sharpen them, focus them, drive them, and then they let it go. Not because they've suppressed it, because they've processed it. And processing requires feeling. Fully. Without editing. You have to let the anger burn. Let the sadness sit. Let the fear inform you. And then you decide what to do with it. That decision is your power. Not the suppression. The decision. And you can't make a clear decision if you're still running from the feeling. So stop running. Stop suppressing. Stop performing. Stop pretending that calm is strength. It's not. Strength is being full. And full includes everything. The calm and the chaos. The control and the intensity. The stillness and the storm. All of it. and you are capable of holding all of it. You just have to stop being afraid of it. Because the fear is what's keeping you small, not the emotion. The fear of the emotion. And fear, when left unchecked, runs your life. It decides when you speak, when you don't, when you push, when you fold. It's been deciding for years. And now it's time for you to decide. To decide that you're done being calm, done being small, done being easy to ignore. To decide that you're going to be full, present, undeniable. Not because you need to prove anything, because you're done hiding. And hiding is exhausting. Being yourself is easier. Even when yourself is messy. When yourself is intense. Even when yourself makes people uncomfortable. Because uncomfortable is not your problem. Your problem is that you've been making yourself uncomfortable for years trying to keep everyone else comfortable. And that ends now. You're going to start being comfortable with who you are, fully, without editing, and let everyone else figure out how to be comfortable with it. That's the new definition of strength. Not calm, not controlled, not restrained, full, and unapologetic about it.
Final, the quiet truth.
You've spent most of your life believing calm was the answer. That if you could just stay even enough, controlled enough, unbothered enough, you'd be powerful. But now you know the truth. Calm is not power. Calm is what you learned to survive a world that couldn't handle your fullness. And survival is not the same as living. You survive by staying small, by managing yourself, by performing a version of calm that kept you safe but invisible. And invisibility is not where you're meant to be. You're meant to be seen, felt, respected, not because you're the calmest, because you're the most real. And real is messy, real is intense, real is uncomfortable sometimes. But real is also powerful, because people don't respect performance. They respect presence. And presence requires you to stop hiding, to stop suppressing, to stop pretending that you don't feel things deeply. You do feel things deeply. You always have. You just learn to bury it, to smooth it over, to make it easier for everyone else. But easier for them has been harder for you, and you're done making it harder for yourself. So here's what changes. You stop performing calm. You start choosing presence. You stop suppressing emotion. You start using it. You stop shrinking. You start taking space. Not because you're trying to be difficult, because you're done being easy. Easy to ignore. Easy to dismiss. Easy to move. You're immovable now. Not because you're rigid. Because you're grounded. Grounded in who you are. What you feel. What you know to be true. And that ground is solid. Solid enough to hold everything. The intensity. The discomfort. The conflict. All of it. And solid people don't get moved. They get respected. Because respect is not about being calm. It's about being undeniable. And you are undeniable. You just forgot for a while. Because you spent so long trying to be something else. Something softer. Something safer. Something that wouldn't disturb the peace. But the peace you were protecting wasn't yours. It was theirs. And protecting their peace cost you your power. So now you take it back. Not aggressively. Not loudly. Quietly. The way all real power moves. Quietly. Certainly. Without needing to announce itself. Because power doesn't need to be seen. It just is. And it shows up not in how calm you stay, but in how full you allow yourself to be. Full of emotion. Full of presence. Full of the truth of who you are in every moment. That fullness is your power. And calm is not who you are. It's something you choose. After power is yours. Not as a survival strategy. As a strategic weapon. When calm serves you, you use it. When intensity serves you, you use that. You're not locked into one mode anymore. You're fluid, adaptive, responsive, and that fluidity makes you dangerous. Not to yourself, to the idea that you were ever small. Because you were never small. You were just trained to be, and training can be unlearned. It takes time. It takes practice. It takes the willingness to be uncomfortable while you remember who you were before you learned to shrink. But it's worth it, because the version of you that exists on the other side of this is not calm. It's powerful. And power doesn't apologize, doesn't explain, doesn't perform. It just exists. Fully, unapologetically, undeniably. And that's who you're becoming. Not the calm one. The powerful one. The one who stopped avoiding power and started claiming it. The one who realized that calm was never the goal. Presence was. And presence requires everything you've been hiding. Your intensity, your edges, your refusal to shrink. All of it. So stop hiding. Stop performing. Stop pretending that calm is strength. It's not. Strength is being full. And you are full. You always were. You just forgot. Now you remember. And now you move differently. Not carefully. Powerfully. Not small. Solid. Not calm. Dangerous. In the best possible way. End.